The Manhattan skyline glittered like scattered diamonds against the October twilight as Elena Martinez stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office on the 42nd floor of the Chrysler Building. At 38, she had built something remarkable, Meridian Tech Solutions, a cybersecurity firm that had grown from a two-person startup in her Brooklyn apartment to a company valued at over $300 million. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman who had sacrificed everything for this dream, the sharp angles of her face softened by exhaustion, her dark hair pulled back in the same practical bun she'd worn since her MIT days, her tailored charcoal suit hiding the tension in her shoulders. "Another late night, Elena?" The familiar voice made her smile before she turned. Marcus Chen, her business partner of 12 years, stood in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee from their favorite place around the corner. His easy grin and relaxed posture had always been the perfect counterbalance to her intensity. Where she was precision and calculation, Marcus was charm and intuition. Together, they had built an empire. "You know me," Elena replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "The Singapore contract won't negotiate itself." Marcus settled into one of the leather chairs facing her desk, his expression shifting to something more serious. "About that. I've been thinking we should slow down on the Asian expansion. Maybe focus on solidifying our position here first." Elena frowned, setting down her cup. "That's not like you. You're usually the one pushing for bigger risks. Besides, the board already approved the expansion strategy." "I know, I just..." Marcus ran a hand through his black hair, a gesture she recognized as nervousness. "Sometimes I wonder if we're moving too fast. What if we're overextending?" "Marcus, we've run the numbers a dozen times. Our cash reserves are strong, our client retention is at 94%, and the Singapore government is practically begging us to set up there. What's really going on?" He stood abruptly, moving to the window. "Nothing. You're right. I'm probably just tired. It's been a long quarter." Elena studied his profile against the city lights. In 12 years, she'd learned to read Marcus like code, every gesture, every pause had meaning. Something was wrong, but she'd also learned when not to push. "Why don't you take the weekend?" she suggested. "That place in the Hamptons you love is probably beautiful right now. Clear your head." Marcus turned back to her, and for a moment, she saw something flicker across his face. Guilt? Fear? But then his trademark smile returned. "Maybe I will. You should too, you know. When's the last time you did something that wasn't work-related?" "I went to that charity gala last month." "Where you spent the entire evening networking with potential clients." Elena laughed, a rare sound in the office these days. "Guilty as charged." Marcus moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. "Elena, you know we've built something amazing here. No matter what happens, I want you to know that." "Marcus, you're scaring me. Are you dying or something?" He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "No, nothing like that. Just feeling sentimental, I guess. 12 years is a long time." After he left, Elena stood at the window for a long moment, the coffee growing cold in her hands. The city below pulsed with life, taxis threading through traffic, pedestrians flowing like water around obstacles, lights winking on in thousands of windows as the workday ended and evening began. She loved this view, loved the sense of being above it all, of having climbed so high from where she'd started. Her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant, Sophia Brooks. "Don't forget you have dinner with the Goldman team at 8. Car will be downstairs at 7:30. Elena sighed. Another dinner, another performance. She moved to the private bathroom attached to her office to freshen up, studying her face in the mirror. Her mother's eyes stared back at her, dark, determined, holding secrets. Her mother had worked 3 jobs to put Elena through school, dying just 2 months before Meridian's first major contract. She'd never seen what her sacrifice had built. The dinner was at 11 Madison Park, the kind of place where a meal cost more than most people's rent. Elena played her part perfectly, confident, charming, knowledgeable. She discussed blockchain integration and quantum encryption with the Goldman executives, her mind only partially engaged while another part observed, analyzed, planned. It was David Harrison from Goldman who changed everything with a casual comment over dessert. "I have to say, Elena, we're impressed by Meridian's stability, especially with all the volatility in the tech sector. That new partnership Marcus is setting up should really solidify your position." Elena's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "New partnership?" David looked confused. "The Phoenix Dynamics deal? Marcus mentioned it when we ran into each other at the club last week. Said it was still under wraps, but..." He trailed off, seeing her expression. "Of course," Elena said smoothly, her mind racing. "Marcus tends to be optimistic about timelines. We're still in preliminary discussions." She managed to maintain the facade through the rest of dinner, but her thoughts churned. Phoenix Dynamics was Meridian's biggest competitor. What possible partnership could Marcus be discussing with them? And why hadn't he mentioned it to her? Back in her Upper East Side penthouse, Elena kicked off her heels and poured herself a glass of wine, a rare indulgence. She stood on her terrace, 30 floors above the city, and tried to make sense of David's comment. There had to be an explanation. Marcus wouldn't, he couldn't. She pulled out her laptop and logged into Meridian's servers. As CEO, she had access to everything, but she rarely checked Marcus's files. Trust was the foundation of their partnership. But David's words gnawed at her. It took her 3 hours to find it, hidden in a maze of encrypted folders and mislabeled files. Her hands shook as she read through the documents, emails, contracts, financial projections. Marcus wasn't planning a partnership with Phoenix Dynamics. He was orchestrating a hostile takeover, using insider information to help Phoenix acquire Meridian at a fraction of its value. The betrayal was breathtaking in its scope and meticulous in its planning. According to the documents, Marcus had been feeding Phoenix sensitive information for 8 months. Client lists, proprietary algorithms, financial vulnerabilities, everything they needed to destroy Meridian's value before swooping in to buy the remains. In exchange, Marcus would receive $40 million and a senior position at Phoenix. Elena's wine glass slipped from numb fingers, shattering on the terrace tiles. The sound seemed to echo in the night air, a crystalline metaphor for everything breaking apart. 12 years. 12 years of 16-hour days, of sharing dreams and fears, of building something from nothing. Marcus had been there for her father's funeral, had held her when she cried after losing their first major client, had celebrated with champagne when they'd signed their 100th. She sank into a chair, her mind struggling to process the betrayal. But even as emotion threatened to overwhelm her, the analytical part of her brain, the part that had earned her a PhD from MIT at 25, was already working. Marcus thought he knew her, thought he could predict her moves. He was wrong. Elena picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts, stopping at a name she hadn't called in 2 years, Isabella Romano, the best corporate lawyer in New York and her former roommate at MIT. Bella? It's Elena. I know it's late, but I need your help. How quickly can you be at my apartment? 20 minutes, Isabella said without hesitation. I'll bring coffee. Elena spent those 20 minutes backing up every piece of evidence to multiple secure servers, creating a timeline of Marcus's betrayal. By the time Isabella arrived, looking impeccable despite the late hour in a cream-colored coat and designer jeans, Elena had transformed her living room into a war room. Jesus, Elena, Isabella said, taking in the laptops, printed documents, and wall of sticky notes Elena had already created. What happened? Elena handed her a glass of wine and began to explain. Isabella's expression grew increasingly grim as she reviewed the evidence. This is comprehensive, Isabella said finally. He's been planning this for months. The bastard even timed it for right before your Series C funding round. If this goes through, you'll lose everything. Not if I stop him first. Isabella studied her friend's face. You're remarkably calm for someone who just discovered their business partner is trying to destroy them. I'm not calm, Elena said quietly. I'm furious. But anger without strategy is just noise. Marcus taught me that, actually. She laughed bitterly. I need to know my options. Isabella pulled out her laptop. First, we need to secure your position. Do you have a partnership agreement? Of course. 50-50 split, but with a morality clause and a non-compete agreement. Perfect. His communication with Phoenix violates both. We can file for emergency injunctive relief first thing in the morning, freeze his assets, and prevent him from accessing any company resources. Won't that tip him off? Yes, but at this point, the element of surprise is less important than protecting the company. Besides, Isabella smiled coldly, I have a few ideas about how to make his life very uncomfortable while staying completely within legal bounds. They worked through the night, fueled by coffee and righteous anger. As dawn painted the Manhattan skyline in shades of pink and gold, they had a plan. It was complex, ruthless, and entirely legal. Marcus had made one crucial mistake, he'd underestimated Elena Martinez. The next morning, Elena arrived at the office at her usual time, wearing her sharpest suit, a black Tom Ford that made her look like she was ready for war. Sophia looked up in surprise as Elena strode past. You're early, even for you. Should I cancel your 9 o'clock? No, but I need you to do something for me. Elena handed her a sealed envelope. At exactly 9:15, I need you to deliver this to Marcus's office. Don't let anyone else touch it, and make sure you get a signature confirmation. Sophia nodded, recognizing the serious tone. Of course. Is everything all right? It will be. Elena spent the next hour in her office, reviewing quarterly reports as if nothing had changed. At 9 a.m. sharp, Isabella walked in with 2 companions, James Mitchell, a forensic accountant, and Olivia Blackwood, a private investigator whose reputation was legendary in corporate circles. Ms. Martinez, Olivia said, shaking her hand with a grip that could crush walnuts. Isabella has briefed us on the situation. We're ready to begin immediately. At 9:15, Elena watched through her glass wall as Sophia delivered the envelope to Marcus's office. She could see his silhouette through his own glass walls, saw him open the envelope, saw him suddenly stand and turn toward her office. Her phone rang immediately. What the hell is this? Marcus's voice was strained, panic bleeding through. I believe the legal term is notice of partnership dissolution due to breach of fiduciary duty, Elena said calmly. Your company access has been revoked, your accounts are frozen pending investigation, and security will escort you from the building within the hour. Elena, wait, this is a misunderstanding. Is it? Should I misunderstand the emails to Nathan Cross at Phoenix Dynamics where you detail our entire client database? Or perhaps I'm misunderstanding the 50-page document outlining how to systematically devalue Meridian? Silence. Then, you don't understand. It's not what it looks like. I understand perfectly. You got greedy. You wanted more than your 50%, and you were willing to destroy everything we built to get it. Elena, please, can we talk about this? Face to face? She looked across the office floor to his corner office, where she could see him standing at his window, phone pressed to his ear. For a moment, her resolve wavered. This was Marcus, who had been her friend before he was her partner, who knew her coffee order and her mother's birthday and her secret fear of failure. We have nothing to discuss. Your personal belongings will be sent to your apartment. Any further communication should go through your lawyer. She hung up and watched as 2 security guards entered Marcus's office. To his credit, he didn't make a scene. he gathered a few items, straightened his tie, and walked out with his head high. But as he passed her office, he stopped and looked at her through the glass. His expression was unreadable: regret, anger, disappointment all mixed together. Elena held his gaze until he turned and walked away. Then she called an all-hands meeting. The main conference room was packed, the energy nervous and confused. News of Marcus's escorted exit had already spread through the office like wildfire. "I'll be direct," Elena began, standing at the head of the long table. "Marcus Chen is no longer with the company, effective immediately. Evidence has come to light that he violated his fiduciary duty to Meridian and attempted to orchestrate a hostile takeover with a competitor." Gasps rippled through the room. She saw shock on faces she'd known for years: their lead developer, Christopher Vale, who Marcus had personally recruited, their CFO, Rachel Morrison, who had always seemed to prefer Marcus's laid-back style to Elena's intensity. "I know this is shocking. Marcus was my partner and friend for 12 years. But Meridian is bigger than any one person, including me. We have built something remarkable here, and we will not let one person's greed destroy it." "What does this mean for the company?" asked Daniel Cooper from sales, always practical. "In the short term, very little. I will assume Marcus's responsibilities while we search for a replacement. Our contracts remain valid, our technology remains ours, and our mission remains unchanged. However, we will be implementing additional security measures and conducting a full audit to ensure no other compromises exist." She fielded questions for an hour, maintaining her composure even as she felt the weight of running the entire company settling on her shoulders. When the meeting ended, most of the staff seemed reassured, but she caught skeptical looks from some, those who had been closer to Marcus, who perhaps wondered if there was another side to the story. Back in her office, Olivia Blackwood was waiting with her first report. "Your partner was busier than we thought," Olivia said, spreading photographs across Elena's desk. They showed Marcus at various restaurants and hotels with Nathan Cross and other Phoenix executives. "These go back a full year. He was planning this for longer than the 8 months you found evidence for." Elena studied the photos, each one another twist of the knife. "What else?" "He's been moving money offshore, Cayman Islands, Switzerland. About 15 million in the last 6 months, all from his personal accounts but timed with Meridian's bonus distributions. That's not illegal, unfortunately." "No, but this might be." Olivia produced another set of documents. 3 months ago, Marcus incorporated a shell company in Delaware, MTC Innovations. Guess what MTC has been doing? Elena's stomach dropped. "Tell me he didn't." "He's been filing patents on variations of Meridian's technology under the shell company. If any of them are approved, he could claim ownership of key components of your systems." Elena sank into her chair. The betrayal kept getting deeper, more calculated. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or a recent temptation. Marcus had been planning her destruction for at least a year, all while smiling at her, bringing her coffee, pretending to be her friend. "Can we stop the patents?" "Isabella's already on it. She's filing challenges based on the work-for-hire doctrine and the fact that the technologies were developed using Meridian resources. But it'll take time and money. Whatever it takes." That evening, Elena found herself alone in the office again, but this time it felt different. The space that had always been her sanctuary now felt tainted. She walked through the floors, past the cubicles and conference rooms, the break room where she and Marcus had shared countless late-night strategy sessions, the server room where they'd celebrated their first $1 million contract with champagne drunk from coffee mugs. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She opened it to find a message from Marcus: "You don't know the whole story. Phoenix has something on me. I never wanted this. Please, Elena, let me explain." She stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it and blocked the number. Whether he was lying now or had been lying all along didn't matter. The damage was done. The law offices of Romano, Kellerman and Associates occupied 3 floors of a bronze glass tower on Park Avenue, the kind of place where power was measured in billable hours and victories in precedent-setting cases. Elena sat in the main conference room, surrounded by a team that had materialized around her crisis like antibodies responding to an infection. Isabella Romano commanded the room with the same fierce intelligence that had made her law review at Harvard. At 41, she had the kind of presence that made opposing counsel nervous before she even spoke. Her assistant, Lauren Phillips, was arranging documents with military precision while Matthew Sullivan, a junior partner specializing in corporate espionage, reviewed the patent filings on his laptop. The good news, Isabella began, is that Marcus was sloppy. The digital trail he left is extensive. The bad news is that Phoenix was smart enough to keep their communications largely verbal. We have evidence of meetings but not always what was discussed. Olivia Blackwood leaned forward, her silver hair catching the morning light. That's where my team comes in. We've been tracking Marcus's movements for the past year. He met with Phoenix executives 47 times, always in public places, restaurants, golf courses, conferences. But here's what's interesting. She pulled up a photograph on the conference room screen. This is from the St. Regis Hotel, 3 months ago. Marcus is with Nathan Cross, obviously, but look at the third person. Elena studied the image. A woman in her 50s, elegant, with the kind of understated wealth that whispered rather than shouted. Who is she? *** Victoria Sterling ***. Former SEC investigator, now runs a consulting firm that specializes in, shall we say, aggressive acquisitions. She's been linked to 3 hostile takeovers in the past 5 years, all following the same pattern: insider information, systematic devaluation, then acquisition at a fraction of market value. So Phoenix brought in a professional, Elena said, anger threading through her voice. It gets worse, James Mitchell, the forensic accountant, interjected. His boyish face belied a mind that could unravel the most complex financial schemes. I've been going through Meridian's books, specifically the transactions Marcus authorized. Over the past 8 months, he's been slowly bleeding the company. Nothing obvious, an inflated expense here, an unnecessary consultant fee there. But it adds up to nearly $3 million funneled to shell companies that all trace back to Phoenix. Elena's hands clenched. He was stealing from us while pretending to be my partner. Technically, it's embezzlement, Isabella said. We can add criminal charges to the civil suit. Do it. Lauren Phillips looked up from her laptop. Ms. Martinez, there's something else. I'd been reviewing employee communications, with proper legal authority, of course, and there are several people within Meridian who seem to have known something was wrong. Who? Rachel Morrison, your CFO, had several meetings with Marcus that weren't on official calendars. Daniel Cooper from sales received a job offer from Phoenix 2 weeks ago. He hasn't responded yet, but the timing is suspicious. And Christopher Vale, your lead developer, has been downloading unusual amounts of source code to personal devices. Elena felt the floor shifting beneath her feet. How deep did this betrayal go? Bring them in. One at a time. I want to know exactly what they know. The first interview was with Rachel Morrison. The CFO entered the conference room with her usual confident stride, but Elena noticed the slight tremor in her hands as she sat down. Rachel, how long have you known? Rachel's face went pale. Elena, Please don't insult my intelligence by denying it. You knew Marcus was up to something. The question is whether you were complicit or just cowardly. Rachel's composure cracked. 6 weeks ago, Marcus asked me to prepare some financial projections. Alternative scenarios, he called them. I thought it was just strategic planning, but then I realized he was modeling the company's value under distress conditions. When I questioned him, he said you had authorized it, that you were considering selling. And you believed him? I wanted to. Elena, you have to understand, you've been so distant lately, so focused on expansion. Marcus said you were burning out, that you wanted an exit strategy. It seemed plausible. But you never thought to verify with me directly? Rachel's silence was answer enough. What else? Elena pressed. Last month, he asked me to delay the quarterly audit. Said the timing was bad with the Singapore expansion. I did it. I'm sorry, Elena. I should have known better. Elena studied her CFO, a woman she'd hired 5 years ago, who she'd trusted with the financial heart of her company. You're fired, Rachel. Security will escort you out. You'll receive the severance required by your contract, nothing more. And if I find out you were more involved than you're admitting, I'll pursue criminal charges. Rachel stood on shaking legs. Elena, please. We're done here. After Rachel left, Isabella turned to Elena. That was harsh. That was necessary. I can't afford weakness now. The interview with Daniel Cooper went differently. The head of sales was a straight shooter, an ex-Marine who valued loyalty above all else. Phoenix approached me, yes, he said without preamble. Offered me double my salary to jump ship. I told them to fuck off, pardon my language. Why didn't you tell me? Honestly? I thought it was just standard corporate poaching. Happens all the time in tech. But now, knowing what Marcus was doing, I should have seen the pattern. I'm sorry, Elena. Are you willing to testify about Phoenix's recruitment tactics? Absolutely. Those bastards tried to buy me. I don't appreciate being treated like a commodity. Elena nodded. Thank you, Daniel. Your loyalty is noted and appreciated. Christopher Vale was the surprise. The lead developer, whom Elena had always seen as Marcus's protégé, laid out a different story entirely. I've been documenting everything, he said, pulling out a tablet. For 3 months, Marcus has been asking me to create variations of our core algorithms, slight modifications that wouldn't affect function but would technically be different intellectual property. I thought it was weird, so I started keeping records. Elena leaned forward. Why didn't you come to me? Christopher's young face flushed. Honestly? I was scared. Marcus hired me, mentored me. But more than that, I wasn't sure you'd believe me. He's been your partner for so long, and I'm just a developer who's been here 2 years. Christopher, this documentation could be crucial to our case. Would you be willing to work with our legal team? Of course. Ms. Martinez, Meridian is the best job I've ever had. I'll do whatever it takes to protect it. As the day wore on, the full picture emerged. Marcus's betrayal was deep but not total. Most of Meridian's employees remained loyal, unaware of the cancer that had been growing in their midst. But the damage was still significant. $3 million embezzled, key intelligence compromised, and the company's trust shattered. That evening, Elena stood in Marcus's empty office. Maintenance had already removed his personal items, but his presence lingered, the faint scent of his cologne, the coffee ring on his desk from his perpetual mug, the whiteboard still covered with his handwriting outlining the Singapore expansion he'd pretended to support. Her phone rang. An unknown number with a 415 area code, San Francisco. Ms. Martinez? This is Alexander Reed. I understand you're having some trouble with Phoenix Dynamics. Alexander Reed, CEO of Quantum Securities, Phoenix's biggest rival. Elena had met him once at a conference, remembered him as sharp, ambitious, and ruthlessly competitive. Mr. Reed. How can I help you? Actually, I believe I can help you. Phoenix tried the same thing with my company 3 years ago. We survived, barely. I have information that might be useful to your case. What kind of information? The kind better discussed in person. Can you meet me tomorrow? I'll fly to New York tonight. Elena considered. In this chess game, she needed allies, even unexpected ones. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., my office. I'll be there. And Ms. Martinez? Don't let them break you. That's what they want, for you to give up, sell cheap, go away quietly. Don't give them the satisfaction. After hanging up, Elena walked back to her own office, where Isabella was still working, surrounded by law books and legal pads. You should go home, Elena said. It's past midnight. I could say the same to you. Isabella looked up, studying her friend's face. How are you holding up? Really? Elena sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. I feel like I'm drowning, Bella. Every time I think I understand the scope of this, it gets worse. How did I not see it? How did I work beside him every day and not know he was planning my destruction? Because you're not a sociopath. You trusted your partner. That's not a weakness, Elena, it's what makes you human. Being human feels like a liability right now. Isabella moved to sit beside her, abandoning her legal documents. Do you remember freshman year at MIT? That professor who said women didn't have the psychological fortitude for high-level mathematics? Despite everything, Elena smiled. Professor Whitman. God, what an ass. And what did you do? You didn't just prove him wrong, you demolished him. Perfect scores on every exam, published a paper that contradicted his research, and got him removed from the tenure track. That was different. That was academic. No, that was you. When someone underestimates you, when they try to destroy you, you don't just survive, you triumph. Marcus forgot that. Phoenix forgot that. They see a woman who built her company on trust and collaboration, and they think that makes you weak. They're about to learn otherwise. Elena felt something shift inside her, a hardening of resolve. You're right. I've been so focused on the betrayal that I forgot who I am. I'm Elena Martinez. I graduated MIT at 21. I built a $300 million company from nothing. I'm not going to let Marcus Chan and some corporate raiders destroy everything I've created. There she is, Isabella said with a smile. Now, let's talk strategy. They worked until dawn, mapping out legal maneuvers, media strategies, and corporate defenses. As the sun rose over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced since discovering Marcus's betrayal: hope. Alexander Reed didn't look like a corporate warrior. At 35, he had the easy smile and casual dress of a Silicon Valley entrepreneur: jeans, a black t-shirt, and sneakers that probably cost more than most people's rent. But his eyes told a different story. They were the eyes of someone who had been in the trenches, who had fought for survival and won. Phoenix Dynamics is a cancer, he said without preamble, settling into the chair across from Elena's desk. They don't innovate, they don't create, they destroy and consume. 3 years ago, they tried to do to quantum what they're doing to you now. How did you stop them? I almost didn't. They had turned my COO, had him feeding them information for 6 months. By the time I discovered it, they had already poisoned 2 of our biggest clients against us, claiming we had security vulnerabilities that didn't exist. Elena leaned forward. But you survived. Barely. Lost 40% of our value, had to lay off a third of our workforce. But we discovered something in the process: Phoenix has a pattern, and patterns can be exploited. Alexander pulled out a tablet, swiping through documents. They always use the same law firm, Brennan, Knox and Associates. They always time their attacks for when companies are seeking new funding. And they always leave a paper trail in Delaware. Delaware? corporate registration heaven. Minimal oversight, maximum privacy. But if you know what to look for. He pulled up a complex chart showing corporate structures. Phoenix has 17 shell companies registered in Delaware. They use them to hide asset transfers, to obscure ownership, and most importantly, to park stolen intellectual property until the heat dies down. Elena studied the chart, her mind already seeing the connections. This is incredibly detailed. Why are you sharing this with me? Alexander's easy smile faded. Because Phoenix needs to be stopped. They're a parasite killing innovation in our industry. And frankly, because I see an opportunity. What kind of opportunity? An alliance. Quantum and Meridian working together. Not a merger, he added quickly, seeing her expression. A partnership. Shared resources for research, joint contracts for enterprise clients, united front against predatory practices. Phoenix is counting on you being isolated. What if you weren't? Elena considered this. Alexander Reed had a reputation for being brilliant but ruthless, someone who played the game at the highest level. Could she trust him? But then, trust was what had gotten her into this situation. What would this partnership look like, exactly? For starters, I can provide immediate contracts to replace any clients Phoenix poaches. My legal team has extensive documentation of Phoenix's practices that could support your case. And I have connections in the tech media who would be very interested in this story. And in return? Access to Meridian's quantum encryption technology for our enterprise clients. A united front in bidding for government contracts. And the satisfaction of watching Phoenix burn. Before Elena could respond, Sophia knocked and entered. Ms. Martinez, you have a visitor who says it's urgent. A Victoria Sterling? Elena and Alexander exchanged glances. Victoria Sterling, the former SEC investigator turned corporate raider consultant, the one who had been meeting with Marcus. Send her in, Elena said, curious despite herself. Victoria Sterling entered with the confidence of someone who had never doubted her welcome anywhere. She was elegantly dressed in a charcoal suit that whispered money, her silver hair styled in a perfect bob. She took in Alexander's presence with a raised eyebrow but didn't comment. Ms. Martinez, thank you for seeing me without an appointment. Mr. Reed, I didn't expect to see you here, but perhaps it's fortuitous. Ms. Sterling, Elena said coolly. You'll forgive me if I'm not particularly welcoming, given your involvement in the attempt to destroy my company. Victoria smiled, a sharp expression that didn't reach her eyes. That's precisely why I'm here. I believe there's been a misunderstanding about my role in this situation. You were advising Phoenix on how to acquire Meridian through corporate sabotage. What's to misunderstand? I was hired to evaluate Meridian as an acquisition target, yes. But I was not aware of Mr. Chin's involvement or Phoenix's methods until very recently. When I discovered the truth, I terminated my contract immediately. Alexander laughed, but there was no humor in it. You expect us to believe you had no idea Phoenix was using illegal tactics? Your entire reputation is built on aggressive acquisitions. Aggressive, yes. Illegal, no. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. My reputation is everything in this business. If it becomes known that I was involved in corporate espionage and embezzlement, even unknowingly, my career is over. Elena saw the angle now. You want to make a deal. I want to correct a mistake. I have all my communications with Phoenix, including recordings of meetings where they discussed their strategies. I'm willing to provide everything to support your case. In exchange for? Immunity from prosecution and a public statement that I was not aware of the illegal activities. Isabella, who had been silent until now, spoke up. We'd need to verify the authenticity of anything you provide. And you'd need to testify if it goes to trial. Agreed. Elena stood, walking to the window. The city sprawled below, indifferent to the drama playing out in her office. 3 weeks ago, she had thought she knew her world, knew who her allies and enemies were. Now everything was shifting, alliances forming and reforming like clouds. "Ms. Sterling, I'll consider your offer. Leave your information with my assistant." Victoria nodded, placing a business card on the desk. "Ms. Martinez, for what it's worth, I've reviewed your company extensively. What you've built is impressive. It would be a shame to see it destroyed by lesser minds." After she left, Alexander whistled low. "That was unexpected." "The question is whether we can trust her," Elena said. "We can't," Alexander said firmly. "But we can use her. Victoria Sterling is a survivor above all else. If she's turning on Phoenix, it means she thinks you're going to win." That evening, Elena called a meeting of her senior staff, those who had proven their loyalty. The conference room was smaller this time, the atmosphere intimate rather than corporate. Daniel Cooper, Christopher Vale, Emma Sinclair from legal, Ryan McCarthy from operations, and a few others, the core team that would help her save Meridian. "I want to be transparent with you all," Elena began. "The next few months are going to be difficult. Phoenix will try to poach our clients, our employees, our technology. They'll spread rumors, file lawsuits, do everything they can to break us. But we have advantages they don't expect." She outlined Alexander's proposed partnership, Victoria's potential testimony, and the legal strategy Isabella had developed. As she spoke, she saw hope kindle in their faces. "Ms. Martinez," Ryan McCarthy said, his Australian accent lending gravity to his words, "what can we do to help?" "Keep doing excellent work. Maintain client relationships. And most importantly, don't let them see us sweat. Phoenix is expecting us to panic, to make mistakes. We're going to disappoint them." Christopher raised his hand like he was still in college. "I've been thinking about the patent issue. What if we open source some of our older technologies? Make them freely available? It would undercut any claim Marcus might have and position us as industry leaders in transparency." Elena smiled, the first genuine smile in days. "That's brilliant, Christopher. Draw up a proposal." As the meeting wound down, Emma Sinclair lingered. The head of legal was a small woman with a fierce intellect, someone Elena had hired away from a Fortune 500 company. "Elena, there's something else you should know. I have a contact at the SEC. They're very interested in Phoenix's practices. If we can provide concrete evidence of their illegal activities, they'll open a formal investigation. Do it. Coordinate with Isabella." Alone in her office as night fell, Elena allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to a number she hadn't called in 2 years, her sister, Julia, living in Seattle. "Jules? It's Elena." "Elena?" Surprise colored her sister's voice. "Is everything okay? You never call." "No," Elena admitted, surprising herself with the honesty. "Everything's not okay. Can we talk?" For the next hour, she told her sister everything, the betrayal, the legal battles, the sleepless nights. Julia listened without judgment, occasionally making sympathetic noises. "You know what Mom would say?" Julia said finally. "That I work too much and should settle down?" Julia laughed. "No, the other thing. La mejor venganza es el éxito. The best revenge is success." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Their mother's favorite saying, usually delivered when their father disappointed them again with broken promises and empty bottles. "I miss her," Elena whispered. "Me too. But Elena, she would be so proud of you. Not just for building the company, but for fighting for it. You're not just protecting a business, you're protecting the dreams of everyone who works there." After they hung up, Elena felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just about Marcus's betrayal anymore. It was about something bigger, about standing up to corporate predators, about protecting innovation, about proving that success didn't require sacrificing integrity. Her phone buzzed with a text from Isabella, motion for injunction approved. Marcus's assets are frozen, and Phoenix is barred from soliciting Meridian employees for 90 days. First victory of many. Elena smiled, looking out at the city lights. The war was far from over, but for the first time since discovering Marcus's betrayal, she felt ready for the fight. The article appeared in TechCrunch at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, its headline designed for maximum impact: Meridian Technologies co-founder accused of corporate espionage in hostile takeover attempt. Elena read it over her morning coffee in her apartment, Isabella beside her on the couch. The journalist, Charlotte Winters, had done her homework. The article detailed Marcus's meetings with Phoenix, the embezzled funds, and the patent scheme, all supported by carefully selected documents that Isabella's team had provided. The comment section is already exploding, Isabella noted, scrolling through her tablet. Industry leaders are weighing in. Look, the CEO of Microsoft just tweeted about the importance of ethical business practices. Elena's phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the article went live. Clients, competitors, investors, everyone wanted to know the real story. Sophia had already fielded 17 interview requests from major media outlets. We need to control the narrative, Elena said. One exclusive interview, someone with credibility. 60 Minutes has been calling, Isabella suggested. Or we could go with someone in tech media, Kara Swisher maybe? Before Elena could respond, her phone rang with a number she recognized, **** Michael Brennan ***, not the therapist from her original plan but a senior reporter at the Wall Street Journal. Ms. Martinez, I'm sure you're getting a lot of calls this morning. I'd like to offer you the opportunity to tell your story in your own words. Full feature, above the fold, complete editorial control over your direct quotes. Elena made a quick decision. Mr. Brennan, can you be at my office in an hour? The interview lasted 3 hours. Michael Brennan was thorough, professional, and surprisingly empathetic. He asked hard questions about her partnership with Marcus, about warning signs she might have missed, about the impact on Meridian's employees and clients. How does it feel, he asked near the end, to be betrayed by someone you considered family? Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. It feels like a death. The Marcus-chan I thought I knew, the partner who helped build this company, that person never really existed. But from death comes rebirth. Meridian will emerge stronger from this. What about Marcus himself? Any message for him? I hope he finds peace with his choices. As for me, I'm focused on the future, not the past. The article appeared 2 days later, a masterpiece of corporate journalism that laid out the entire saga in devastating detail. The headline read, "The $300 million Betrayal, Inside the Corporate Espionage Scandal Rocking Silicon Valley." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Phoenix's stock price dropped 12% in a single day. 3 of their board members called for an emergency meeting. The SEC announced a formal investigation. And Marcus Chen became radioactive in the tech community, unhireable, untouchable, a cautionary tale whispered about in Silicon Valley bars. But Phoenix wasn't going down without a fight. The counterattack came in the form of a lawsuit, Phoenix suing Meridian for defamation, claiming the allegations were fabricated to prevent a legitimate business transaction. They demanded $500 million in damages. It's an intimidation tactic, Isabella explained at the emergency strategy meeting. They're trying to drain our resources, force us to settle. Let them try, Elena said grimly. Alexander, is your offer of support still on the table? Alexander Reed, participating via video from San Francisco, nodded. Absolutely. In fact, I have news. 3 of Phoenix's major clients have reached out to Quantum about switching providers. They're nervous about the SEC investigation. Chris, Elena turned to her lead developer, how's the open source initiative coming? Ready to launch. We're releasing our entire 1.0 encryption suite, the technology that put us on the map 5 years ago. It's still valuable but not our current competitive advantage. The tech community will love it, and it completely undermines any patent claim Marcus might make. Do it. Ryan, what about operations? Ryan McCarthy pulled up a presentation. We've lost 2 clients, both companies with deep ties to Phoenix. But we've gained 5 new ones, including a major contract with the Department of Defense. Turns out, the government appreciates companies that protect their intellectual property. Elena felt a surge of pride. Her team was not just surviving but thriving under pressure. Emma, what's the latest on the legal front? Emma Sinclair, their head of legal, looked tired but determined. We're filing countersuits for corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, and tortious interference. Victoria Sterling's evidence is proving invaluable. She has recordings of Phoenix executives discussing, and I quote, breaking Meridian into pieces we can digest. Charming, Elena muttered. What about Marcus? Criminal charges have been filed. The DA is confident about embezzlement, less certain about corporate espionage. His lawyer is pushing for a plea deal. No deals, Elena said firmly. He made his choice. That evening, Elena met with Charlotte Winters, the journalist who had broken the story. They sat in a quiet corner of the Gramercy Tavern, the dinner crowd providing cover for their conversation. I have more information, Charlotte said, sliding a folder across the table. My sources tell me this isn't Phoenix's first rodeo. They've done this at least 4 times in the past decade, always following the same pattern. Elena opened the folder, scanning the documents. For companies, all tech firms, all destroyed or absorbed by Phoenix after insider betrayals. The pattern was clear and damning. This is enough for a book, Elena said. Charlotte smiled. That's the idea. Corporate predators, the Phoenix Dynamics story. Interested in being a primary source? Very interested. As she walked home through the New York evening, Elena's phone rang with an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Elena. Marcus's voice, strained and desperate. Please, don't hang up. She stopped walking, standing in the middle of the sidewalk as pedestrians flowed around her. You're violating the restraining order by calling me. I know. I needed you to know I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go, Marcus? When you started stealing from the company? When you sold our secrets to our competitors? When you tried to destroy everything we built together? They had leverage on me, Elena. My family. Stop. Her voice was ice. I don't care about your excuses. You had choices. You could have come to me, could have asked for help. Instead, you chose betrayal. I love the company too. No, you loved the money. You loved the prestige. But you never loved the work, the mission, the people. That's the difference between us, Marcus. I built Meridian to create something meaningful. You saw it as something to exploit. Elena, please. She hung up and blocked the number. Her hands were shaking, but not from anger. From release. She had said what needed to be said, had closed that chapter. Her phone immediately rang again, Isabella this time. You need to see the news, Isabella said without preamble. Elena ducked into a nearby restaurant, asking the bartender to turn on CNBC. The headline scrolling across the bottom made her stomach drop, Phoenix Dynamics CEO Nathan Cross arrested on federal charges. The reporter was breathless with excitement. In a stunning development, FBI agents arrested Nathan Cross at his Palo Alto home this morning. Sources say the arrest is connected to the ongoing investigation into corporate espionage and securities fraud. Elena felt a savage satisfaction. The predator had become prey. The federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan was a monument to justice, its classical columns and bronze doors speaking of permanence and power. Elena arrived early for the preliminary hearing, dressed in her most conservative suit, navy blue, understated, projecting quiet authority. Isabella walked beside her, briefcase in hand, confidence radiating from every step. Behind them, a small army of lawyers and assistants carried boxes of evidence. "Remember," Isabella murmured as they climbed the courthouse steps, "this is just the beginning. We're establishing the foundation for everything that follows." The courtroom was packed. Media, industry observers, and curious members of the public filled every available seat. Elena spotted Alexander Reed in the gallery, giving her a subtle nod of support. Charlotte Winter sat in the press section, notebook at the ready. And there, at the defendant's table, sat Marcus Chen. He looked diminished, Elena thought. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by something hollow. His expensive suit couldn't hide the weight he'd lost or the shadows under his eyes. For a moment, their eyes met across the courtroom. Marcus looked away first. Judge Grace Hamilton entered, commanding immediate respect. A former federal prosecutor with a reputation for fairness and intolerance of corporate malfeasance, she would oversee the civil proceedings while criminal cases proceeded in parallel. "We're here for preliminary motions in the matter of Meridian Technologies versus Chen and Phoenix Dynamics," Judge Hamilton began. "I've reviewed the briefs. Ms. Romano, you may proceed." Isabella stood, her voice carrying clearly through the courtroom. "Your Honor, we're seeking immediate injunctive relief to prevent further damage to our client's business. The evidence will show a systematic conspiracy to destroy Meridian Technologies through corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, and breach of fiduciary duty." She laid out the case methodically, the secret meetings, the stolen information, the embezzled funds. As she spoke, Elena watched the judge's expression grow increasingly stern. Marcus's lawyer, William Parker from the white shoe firm of Brennan, Knox and Associates, tried to counter. "Your Honor, my client was exploring legitimate business opportunities. Ms. Martinez is attempting to criminalize normal corporate negotiations. Normal negotiations don't typically involve stealing $3 million, Judge Hamilton observed dryly. "Continue, Mr. Parker." The hearing lasted 4 hours. Evidence was presented, arguments made, tempers occasionally flaring. Through it all, Elena remained composed, even when Marcus's lawyer tried to paint her as a vindictive ex-partner seeking revenge for imagined slights. The moment that changed everything came when Isabella introduced Victoria Sterling's recordings. "Phoenix Executive, recorded May 15, Isabella announced, as the audio filled the courtroom. "Nathan Cross's voice, clear and damning, Chen's giving us everything. By the time we're done, Martinez won't have a company left to run." The courtroom erupted. Judge Hamilton gavelled for order, but the damage was done. The media had their soundbite, and Marcus's lawyer looked like he'd been punched. "I've heard enough for today," Judge Hamilton announced. "Preliminary injunction is granted. Mr. Chen is barred from any contact with Phoenix Dynamics, any access to Meridian properties or systems, and any use of Meridian intellectual property. Additionally, his assets are frozen pending resolution of the embezzlement claims." As they left the courthouse, Elena was mobbed by reporters. She gave a brief statement, thanking the judge for her ruling and reaffirming Meridian's commitment to protecting innovation and integrity in the tech industry. That evening, she met with her inner circle at a private room in Balthazar. The champagne was flowing, but Elena noticed Christopher Vale sitting apart, staring at his phone with a troubled expression. "Chris? What's wrong?" He looked up, hesitating. "It's probably nothing, but I've been monitoring our systems for any unusual activity." There's something odd happening with our backup servers. Elena's blood chilled. What kind of odd? Someone's been accessing them. Not downloading anything, just looking. The access codes are from Marcus's old credentials, which should have been deactivated. When did this start? 3 days ago. Right after the lawsuit was filed. Elena stood immediately. We need to get to the office. Now. The next 2 hours were a frantic race against time. Christopher and his team worked to trace the intrusion while Elena and Isabella contacted the FBI's cybercrime division. What they discovered was chilling. Someone had planted a logic bomb in their backup systems, set to delete everything in 12 hours. If this had gone off, Christopher said, his face pale, we would have lost 5 years of data. Every client record, every piece of code, everything. Can you stop it? Already did. But Elena, this wasn't Marcus. He doesn't have the technical skills for something this sophisticated. Phoenix, Elena said grimly. They're getting desperate. The FBI arrived within the hour, led by Special Agent Jessica Turner, a no-nonsense woman who specialized in corporate cybercrimes. Ms. Martinez, this attack originated from servers in Eastern Europe, but the payment trail leads back to a Phoenix shell company. Combined with the existing investigation, this is enough for federal RICO charges. RICO? Elena asked. As in racketeering? Phoenix has engaged in a pattern of criminal behavior across state lines. That makes them a criminal enterprise under federal law. Mr. Cross's arrest was just the beginning. As dawn broke over Manhattan, Elena stood in her office, exhausted but victorious. They had not only stopped the attack but gained crucial evidence that would destroy Phoenix completely. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, you think you've won, but this isn't over. N. Nathan Cross, even from federal custody, was still fighting. But Elena wasn't afraid anymore. She had survived betrayal, sabotage, and now a cyber attack. Whatever came next, she was ready. The call came at 3 a.m., jarring Elena from the first decent sleep she'd had in weeks. Sophia's voice was panicked. Elena, there's been an accident. It's Marcus. Elena sat up, instantly alert. What kind of accident? He's in the hospital. Apparent suicide attempt. Pills. His lawyer called our office for some reason, said Marcus kept saying your name. Elena stared at the darkness of her bedroom, processing this. Despite everything, she felt something, not sympathy exactly, but a hollow ache for what had been lost. Which hospital? Mount Sinai. But Elena, you don't have to. I'll call you back. She dressed quickly, her mind churning. This could be manipulation, another move in Marcus's game. Or it could be genuine desperation from a man who had lost everything. The hospital at 4 a.m. was a liminal space, fluorescent lights creating harsh shadows, the smell of disinfectant unable to mask the underlying scent of human suffering. Elena found Marcus's room on the 7th floor, a police officer stationed outside, suicide watch in custody, a grim combination. Marcus was awake, staring at the ceiling. He looked fragile, diminished, nothing like the confident partner who had once shared her dreams. You came, he said, voice hoarse. I don't know why I'm here, Elena admitted, standing by the door. I do. Because despite everything, you're still human. Still capable of compassion. It's what I counted on, actually. Elena's guard went up immediately. Is this another manipulation? Marcus laughed bitterly. No. God, no. The pills were real, Elena. The despair is real. I've lost everything, my reputation, my money, my freedom soon enough. But that's not why I did it. Then why? Because I finally understood what I really lost. Not the company or the wealth, but you. Your respect. Your friendship. The only real relationship I've ever had that wasn't transactional. Elena moved closer, studying his face. You had my friendship, Marcus. My trust. My loyalty. And you sold it for $40 million. $30 million, he corrected. Phoenix lowered their offer when things got complicated. Is that supposed to make it better? No. Nothing makes it better. He turned to look at her directly. I need to tell you something. About Phoenix, about why I really did it. Your family leverage story? I don't want to hear it. Not leverage. Truth. Marcus struggled to sit up. My father. He's been laundering money for organized crime for 20 years. Phoenix found out. They had enough evidence to put him away for life. So yes, I had a choice, betray you or destroy my family. I chose family. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just understanding. Elena felt the ground shift beneath her. Why didn't you come to me? We could have found another way. Could we? Would you have risked Meridian to save my criminal father? Would you have even believed me? The question hung between them, unanswered because they both knew the truth. The Elena of 6 months ago would have been too focused on the company to see the human cost. There's more, Marcus continued. Phoenix has other people inside Meridian. I don't know who, they kept everything compartmentalized. But someone else is feeding them information. Who? I don't know. But watch Ryan McCarthy. Something about him never felt right. Before Elena could respond, a nurse entered. I'm sorry, visiting hours. She's leaving, Marcus said. Elena, for what it's worth, I'm going to testify. Tell the FBI everything. It won't undo what I did, but maybe it'll help stop Phoenix. Elena paused at the door. Marcus, get help. Real help. Whatever you were before this, whatever you could have been, find a way back to that. She left without looking back, but his broken thank you followed her down the sterile corridor. Outside, dawn was breaking over Manhattan. Elena sat in her car, processing Marcus's revelation. Another mole at Meridian. She thought about Ryan McCarthy, Australian, charming, competent. He'd joined them 18 months ago, right around when Marcus's betrayal began. Coincidence? She called Olivia Blackwood. I need you to investigate Ryan McCarthy. Deeply. Discreetly. On it. Elena, are you okay? You sound different. I just saw Marcus. He tried to kill himself. Jesus. Do you believe it was genuine? Yes. He's many things, but he's not that good an actor. Olivia, he said Phoenix has someone else inside Meridian. I'll expand the investigation. Everyone who joined in the last 2 years, everyone with access to sensitive information. We'll find them. Elena drove to the office, arriving before 6 a.m. The building was nearly empty, just security and a few early arrivals. She made coffee and stood at the window, watching the city wake up. 6 months ago, she had stood in the same spot with Marcus, planning Meridian's future. Now she was planning its survival. You're here early. She turned to find Ryan McCarthy in the doorway, coffee in hand, his usual easy smile in place. Couldn't sleep, she said, studying him with new eyes. You? Same. This whole situation has everyone on edge. He moved into the office, and Elena noticed how he positioned himself between her and the door. Subtle, but there. How are the Singapore negotiations going? She asked, testing. Slow but steady. Should have a proposal by end of week. Interesting. The Singapore deal had been officially tabled 2 weeks ago, something anyone with Ryan's access should know. Good, she said, playing along. Keep me posted. After he left, Elena immediately checked the system logs. Ryan had accessed the Singapore files yesterday, downloading everything to a personal device. The mole had just revealed himself. She called an emergency meeting with Isabella, Olivia, and Agent Turner from the FBI. "We need to be careful," Agent Turner advised. "If we spook him, we lose the chance to trace the connection back to Phoenix. Let him think he's safe while we build the case." "How long?" "Give us 72 hours. We'll tap his communications, track his movements. When we move, we'll have everything." The next 3 days were torture. Elena had to interact with Ryan normally, attend meetings where he was present, all while knowing he was betraying them. She watched him charm clients, offer strategic insights, play the part of loyal executive, and wanted to scream. But she also used the time productively. With Isabella, she restructured Meridian's governance to prevent future infiltration. With Alexander Reed, she finalized their partnership agreement, creating a strategic alliance that would protect both companies. With Christopher Vale, she implemented new security protocols that would make future breaches nearly impossible. On the morning of the 4th day, the FBI struck. Ryan was arrested at his apartment, agents seizing computers, phones, and documents. The evidence was overwhelming: months of communications with Phoenix, detailed reports on Meridian's operations, and payment records showing $2 million in offshore transfers. But Ryan's arrest revealed something unexpected. He wasn't just a corporate spy, he was Nathan Cross's illegitimate son, placed at Meridian as a long-term asset before Marcus's recruitment. "It was always a family business for them," Agent Turner explained. "Cross has been using his son as a spy for years, infiltrating companies before destroying them." The revelation made headlines worldwide. Like father, like son, the Phoenix dynasty of corporate espionage, read the Wall Street Journal. Phoenix's stock price cratered. 3 more board members resigned. Class action lawsuits from shareholders piled up. Elena stood in the conference room, addressing her remaining staff, those who had proven loyal, who had weathered the storm. "We've been tested," she said. "Betrayed by partners, attacked by competitors, infiltrated by spies. But we're still here. Meridian is still standing. And now, we rebuild." The applause was genuine, heartfelt. These people had chosen to stay, to fight, to believe in something more than just a paycheck. Christopher Vale raised his hand. "What about Marcus's position? Are we looking for a new co-CEO?" Elena had been thinking about this. "No. Meridian doesn't need 2 CEOs. It needs a strong leadership team. Christopher, I'm promoting you to CTO. Emma, you're now Chief Legal Officer. Daniel, Chief Revenue Officer. We're going to run this company as a team, with transparency and trust." "What about a board of directors?" Emma asked. "We're bringing in independent directors. People with no ties to our past, who can provide objective oversight. Including," Elena smiled, "Dr. Amelia Foster from Stanford's Business School, Judge Sebastian Cole, retired from the Second Circuit, and Catherine Walsh, former Secretary of Commerce." The room buzzed with excitement. These were heavyweight appointments, people whose presence would restore confidence in Meridian. That evening, Elena met with Charlotte Winters for a follow-up interview. "How does it feel to have survived this?" Charlotte asked. "Like I've been through a war," Elena admitted. "I'm scarred, probably permanently changed. But I'm also stronger. Meridian is stronger." "Any regrets?" Elena considered the question. "I regret not seeing the signs earlier. I regret that Marcus felt he had no other choice. But I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret protecting what we built." "What's next for Meridian?" "Growth, but sustainable growth. Innovation, but with integrity. We're launching a new initiative, the Meridian Trust, that will fund cybersecurity research at universities and provide resources for startups. We want to give back to the community that supported us. And personally? What's next for Elena Martinez? For the first time in months, Elena smiled genuinely. I'm going to take a vacation. A real one. No phones, no emails, no crisis management. Just me and a beach somewhere, remembering what it feels like to be human. The federal courthouse in January was a different beast than it had been in October. Snow blanketed the steps, and the media presence had evolved from curious observers to a full-scale circus. The criminal trial of Nathan Cross and the civil proceedings against Phoenix Dynamics had been combined into what the media called the tech trial of the century. Elena arrived in a black town car, flanked by Isabella and her security team. She'd received death threats from Phoenix shareholders who'd lost millions, requiring constant protection. The irony wasn't lost on her, she was the victim, yet she needed bodyguards. Inside, the courtroom was packed. She saw familiar faces: Alexander Reed, Charlotte Winters, various tech luminaries who'd come to witness Phoenix's downfall. At the defendant's table, Nathan Cross sat with his legion of lawyers, his expression defiant despite the orange jumpsuit. Ryan McCarthy was nowhere to be seen. He'd cut a deal, testifying against his father in exchange for a reduced sentence. But it was the figure at the prosecution's table that surprised her: Marcus Chen, looking healthier than he had in the hospital, sitting with federal prosecutors as their star witness. Judge Lucas Thorne, brought in specially for the high-profile case, called the court to order. At 65, he had a reputation for brilliant legal mind and zero tolerance for corporate criminals. We're here for the criminal trial of Nathan Cross and Phoenix Dynamics executives on charges including racketeering, corporate espionage, wire fraud, and conspiracy, Judge Thorne announced. Prosecution, you may begin. The lead prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Adams, was a force of nature. She laid out the case methodically, painting a picture of Phoenix as a criminal enterprise that had destroyed dozens of companies over 2 decades. Phoenix Dynamics wasn't a technology company, she declared. It was a parasitic organism that fed on innovation, destroying creators to enrich destroyers. The first week was devoted to establishing the pattern. Company after company, executive after executive testified about Phoenix's tactics. Elena watched Nathan Cross's confident facade crack as the evidence mounted. When Marcus took the stand, the courtroom went silent. He looked directly at Elena as he swore to tell the truth, then began his testimony. I was recruited by Nathan Cross in January of last year, Marcus began. He knew about my father's criminal connections and used that knowledge to coerce me into betraying my partner and my company. Did you resist? Adams asked. At first, yes. But Cross made it clear that if I didn't cooperate, my father would be arrested and Meridian would be destroyed anyway through other means. He said they had other assets in place. Did you know about Ryan McCarthy? No. Cross kept everything compartmentalized. I only knew my part. The defense attorney, Robert Lancaster, tried to paint Marcus as a willing participant, but Marcus owned his guilt. I made a choice, Marcus said clearly. A wrong choice. I betrayed someone who trusted me, and I'll live with that for the rest of my life. But I'm here now to make sure Nathan Cross can't do this to anyone else. Elena testified on day 3 of the second week. She walked through the discovery of the betrayal, the evidence gathering, the cyber attack. She remained composed even when Lancaster tried to portray her as vindictive. Ms. Martinez, Lancaster said smoothly, isn't it true that you and Mr. Chen had a romantic relationship? Objection. Isabella called out from the gallery. Relevance? I'll allow it, Judge Thorne said, but get to the point, counselor. We were never romantically involved, Elena said firmly. Marcus was my business partner and friend. Nothing more. Yet you're pursuing him with unusual vigor. I'm pursuing justice, Elena interrupted. Phoenix Dynamics tried to destroy a company that employs 300 people, that provides critical cybersecurity to hospitals, schools, and government agencies. This isn't personal, Mr. Lancaster. It's about protecting innovation from predation. The moment that broke the case came from an unexpected source, Victoria Sterling. She'd been subpoenaed by the prosecution and delivered testimony that was devastating to Phoenix. Mr. Cross bragged about his tactics, she said coolly. He called it evolution in action, weak companies being consumed by the strong. He had a wall in his office with logos of companies Phoenix had destroyed. He called it his trophy wall. She produced photographs of the wall, 23 company logos, each representing hundreds of jobs lost, innovations stifled, dreams destroyed. Did Mr. Cross ever express remorse? Adams asked. Never. He said business was war, and in war, conscience was a liability. Ryan McCarthy's testimony was perhaps the most dramatic. Facing his father across the courtroom, he detailed years of manipulation and grooming. He's been training me for this since I was 15, Ryan said, his Australian accent thick with emotion. He taught me to lie, to manipulate, to see people as assets or obstacles. I thought it was normal. I thought it was business. Why are you testifying against him now? Adams asked. Ryan looked directly at his father. Because I saw what it did to people. Elena Martinez built something real, something valuable. We tried to destroy it for profit. That's not business, it's piracy. Nathan Cross's expression was murderous, but he remained silent. The defense's case was weak. They tried to argue that everything Phoenix had done was standard competitive practice, but the evidence was overwhelming. When Nathan Cross himself took the stand, his arrogance sealed his fate. I built Phoenix from nothing, he declared. We provided value to shareholders, returns to investors. If other companies couldn't compete, that's capitalism. Even if competing meant stealing trade secrets? Adams pressed. I never stole anything personally. You just ordered others to do it. I suggested aggressive tactics. How my employees interpreted those suggestions was their choice. The jury deliberated for just 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Judge Thorne's sentencing 2 weeks later was harsh but fair. Nathan Cross received 25 years in federal prison and was ordered to pay $500 million in restitution. Other Phoenix executives received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years. The company itself was dissolved, its assets liquidated to pay victims. Marcus Chen, who had pled guilty and cooperated, received 5 years, with the possibility of early release for good behavior. Standing on the courthouse steps afterward, Elena gave a brief statement to the media. Justice has been served, but this isn't a celebration. Lives were damaged, trust was broken, innovation was stifled. My hope is that this case serves as a deterrent to others who might consider similar tactics. In tech, as in life, integrity matters. As she walked to her car, Marcus's lawyer approached. Ms. Martinez, Marcus asked me to give you this. It was a letter, sealed. Elena took it but didn't open it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Back at Meridian's offices, the atmosphere was subdued but hopeful. The threat was over, but the scars remained. Elena called an all-hands meeting. We won, she said simply. Phoenix is gone, justice was served, and Meridian survived. But victory in court doesn't erase what happened. We need to heal, to rebuild trust, to remember why we do this work. She announced new initiatives, profit sharing for all employees, mental health support, a commitment to transparency that would make future betrayals impossible. We're also establishing the Meridian Ethics Board, she continued, independent oversight to ensure we never become what we fought against. As the meeting ended and employees dispersed, Elena found herself alone in her office once more. She pulled out Marcus's letter, staring at it for a long moment before opening it. Elena. Asterisk, by the time you read this, I'll be in federal prison. I deserve to be there. I betrayed not just you but everything we claim to stand for. Asterisk. Asterisk, I won't ask for forgiveness, some things are unforgivable. But I want you to know that the years we built Meridian together were the best of my life. The person I was then, before fear and greed corrupted me, that was the real me. Or at least, the me I want to be again. Asterisk. Asterisk, I'm going to use my time in prison to figure out how I lost my way. Maybe when I get out, I can do something worthwhile with whatever time I have left. Asterisk. Asterisk, thank you for visiting me in the hospital. Thank you for still seeing the human in me when I'd forgotten it myself. Asterisk. Asterisk, build something amazing, Elena. You were always the heart of Meridian. Asterisk. Marcus. Elena read the letter twice, then fed it into the shredder. The past was the past. It was time to look forward. 6 weeks after the trial, Elena stood at the edge of a cliff in Big Sur, California, watching the Pacific Ocean crash against the rocks below. The Esalen Institute, perched between the mountains and the sea, was about as far from Manhattan's glass towers as she could get without leaving the country. She'd resisted the idea when her new therapist, Dr. Sarah Mills, had suggested it. A week-long executive retreat focused on leadership through mindfulness sounded like corporate buzzword bingo. But Sarah had been persistent. You've been in survival mode for almost a year, Sarah had said. Your body doesn't know the threat is over. You need to reset, to remember who you are outside of crisis. So here she was, wearing yoga pants instead of a power suit, her phone locked in the retreat center safe, completely disconnected from Meridian for the first time in, she couldn't remember how long. First time? Elena turned to find a woman about her age, Asian features, warm smile, wearing the kind of expensive athletic wear that whispered money. Is it that obvious? Elena replied. The death grip on your coffee cup gives it away. I'm Lily Zhang. Tech refugee from Seattle. Elena Martinez. Tech refugee from New York. Lily's eyes widened slightly. The Elena Martinez? Meridian Technologies? Elena tensed, waiting for questions about the trial, the scandal, the media circus. Your quantum encryption algorithm is brilliant, Lily continued. We've been trying to license it for our medical devices. Secure patient data transmission is everything in our field. You're in medical tech? Zhang Biomedical. We make implantable monitors for chronic conditions. Started it after my daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and I realized how archaic most medical monitoring was. They talked for an hour, sitting on the cliff watching the sun paint the ocean gold. It was the first normal conversation Elena had had in months, no lawyers, no strategies, no careful parsing of words. Just two entrepreneurs talking shop and swapping war stories. The retreat itself was more challenging than Elena had anticipated. 7 days of meditation, group therapy, movement workshops, and authentic communication exercises. The first day, she nearly left twice. Sitting still, being present, feeling her feelings, it was harder than any board meeting or legal deposition. On the third day, during a guided meditation, something cracked open inside her. The instructor was talking about letting go, about releasing what no longer served, and suddenly Elena was sobbing, deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from her bones. The grief wasn't just about Marcus's betrayal. It was older, deeper. Grief for her mother, who she'd never properly mourned. Grief for the girl who'd started Meridian with nothing but hope and code. Grief for the innocence that believed partnership meant trust and success meant safety. Let it move through you, the instructor said softly. Emotion is just energy in motion. Let it flow. That night, Elena sat with Lily and other retreat participants around a fire pit, sharing stories under the stars. I built my company to prove I was worthy, admitted Brandon Torres, a venture capitalist from Silicon Valley. Worthy of my father's respect, my peers' admiration, my own impossibly high standards. It took a heart attack at 42 to realize I was killing myself for approval from people who didn't actually matter. I lost my company to a hostile takeover, shared Jennifer Adams, not the prosecutor, but a biotech CEO. Spent 2 years plotting revenge before I realized I was letting them steal my future as well as my past. When it was Elena's turn, she found herself telling the whole story, not the corporate version she'd given in court, but the human one. The late nights with Marcus, building something from nothing. The moment she'd realized the depth of his betrayal. The emptiness that came after winning. I got justice, she said, staring into the fire. Phoenix is destroyed, Marcus is in prison, I saved my company. So why do I feel so empty? Because you defined yourself by the fight, said Dr. Michael Brennan, this time, actually the therapist from the retreat, not the journalist. When the enemy is defeated, the warrior loses purpose. You need to remember who you were before the war, and decide who you want to be after it. The breakthrough came on day 5, during a workshop on embodied leadership. The facilitator, Grace Hamilton, not the judge, but a former CEO turned executive coach, had them do an exercise in pairs. Stand facing your partner, Grace instructed. Without words, one person will lead movement, and the other will follow. Then switch. Notice what arises: control, trust, creativity, fear. Elena was paired with a quiet man named Anthony King, a former Wall Street trader who'd left finance to teach high school math. When Elena led, her movements were precise, controlled, predictable. When Anthony led, his movements were fluid, playful, unexpected. I can't follow this, Elena said, frustrated. There's no pattern. That's the point, Anthony replied gently. Life doesn't follow patterns. Business might, but life doesn't. You've been trying to control everything for so long, you've forgotten how to flow. That afternoon, Elena walked alone to the hot springs that Iselin was famous for. She soaked in the mineral water, looking out at the endless ocean, and made a decision. Meridian would survive without her constant vigilance. It was time to learn who Elena Martinez was when she wasn't fighting for survival. The last night of the retreat, there was a talent show of sorts, participants sharing hidden skills. Lily played violin, Brandon read poetry he'd written, Jennifer sang jazz standards. Elena hadn't planned to participate, but found herself at the piano they'd wheeled onto the deck. She played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece her mother had loved. As her fingers found the familiar keys, she remembered Sunday afternoons in their small apartment, her mother humming along while cooking, the music making their cramped space feel infinite. When she finished, the applause was warm, genuine. But it was Lily's comment that stayed with her, you play like someone remembering how to breathe. On the final morning, as participants exchanged contact information and made promises to stay in touch, Grace Hamilton pulled Elena aside. You're at a crossroads, Grace said. You can go back to New York and resume your old patterns, work as armor, success as validation. Or you can take what you've learned here and create something new. Not a new company, a new way of being. Elena packed her things slowly, reluctant to leave this bubble of safety and self-discovery. As the retreat van wound down the coastal highway toward Monterey Airport, she pulled out a notebook and began writing, not business plans or legal strategies, but thoughts, feelings, possibilities. At the airport, waiting for her flight back to New York, her phone buzzed with hundreds of messages as it reconnected to the world. Emails from Isabella about ongoing legal matters. Updates from Christopher about new contracts. Media requests from Charlotte Winters. Elena looked at them all, then did something unprecedented. She archived everything unread and called Sophia. I'm extending my time away, she said. Another week. Maybe 2. Is everything okay? Sophia asked, concerned. Everything's perfect. I'm just not ready to come back yet. The company can run without me for a bit longer. Of course it can. Elena, you sound different. Lighter. I feel lighter. Sophia, can you do me a favor? Clear my calendar for the next month. All of it. When I come back, I want to ease in slowly. After hanging up, Elena changed her flight, not to New York, but to Seattle. Lily had invited her to visit, to see her lab, to explore potential collaboration. But more than that, Elena wanted to explore who she might be in a new city, with new people, without the weight of the past year. As the plane lifted off, Elena looked down at the California coast disappearing beneath clouds and felt something she hadn't experienced in years: possibility without plan, future without fear. She didn't know what came next, and for the first time in her adult life, that uncertainty felt like freedom rather than failure. Seattle in February was gray and drizzling, but Elena found the weather soothing after the intensity of California sunshine. She'd rented an Airbnb in Capitol Hill, a converted loft with exposed brick and large windows overlooking the city. It was smaller than her Manhattan penthouse but felt more like home than that space ever had. Lily's laboratory occupied 2 floors of a building near the University of Washington. Zhang Biomedical was smaller than Meridian, maybe 50 employees, but the energy was palpable. Young researchers rushed between labs, prototypes covered workbenches, and whiteboards were filled with equations Elena only half understood despite her MIT education. This is where the magic happens, Lily said, leading Elena through the main lab. We're developing continuous glucose monitors that can predict blood sugar crashes 3 hours in advance. It could revolutionize diabetes management. The data transmission requirements must be enormous, Elena observed, her mind already working through the technical challenges. Exactly. Which is why your quantum encryption is so interesting to us. Medical data is the holy grail for hackers, more valuable than credit card numbers. If we can guarantee absolute security. They spent the morning discussing technical specifications, potential partnerships, and shared vision. But lunch was personal, at a small Vietnamese restaurant where Lily was clearly a regular. Can I ask you something? Lily said over pho. How did you know it was time to step back? From Meridian, I mean. Elena considered the question. I didn't, really. My therapist, the retreat, everyone else seemed to know before I did. I think I was so used to crisis mode that I didn't know how to exist without it. And now? Now I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not in warrior mode. It's harder than I expected. Lily nodded. After my divorce, I threw myself into building this company. It was easier than dealing with the failure of my marriage. But my daughter called me out on it last year. Said I was present for every board meeting but absent for every school play. What did you do? Set boundaries. Hired good people and actually let them do their jobs. Started dating again, disaster, by the way, but educational disasters. Learned to cook something besides instant ramen. Small things, but they added up to a life outside the lab. That evening, Elena attended a tech meetup Lily had mentioned, not as a speaker or honored guest, but just as another entrepreneur in the crowd. Nobody recognized her, and she found herself in genuine conversations about technology, innovation, and the future without the weight of her reputation. She met Kevin Hughes, a former Microsoft engineer starting a company focused on accessibility tech. His passion reminded her of herself a decade ago, pure enthusiasm unmarred by cynicism or betrayal. The biggest challenge is funding, Kevin explained. VCs don't see the immediate profit in making technology accessible to people with disabilities. What if profit wasn't the primary metric? Elena found herself saying. What if impact was? Kevin's eyes lit up. That's the dream. but Impact doesn't pay developer salaries. Elena exchanged contact information with him, an idea forming in her mind. What if she used some of her resources, both financial and intellectual, to support innovations that prioritized social good over pure profit? Over the next week, Elena fell into a rhythm. Mornings at coffee shops, reading without agenda, fiction for the first time in years. Afternoons at Lily's lab or exploring Seattle's tech scene. Evenings trying new restaurants, attending concerts, remembering what culture felt like outside conference rooms. She also started writing, not reports or strategies, but reflections on leadership, on betrayal, on rebuilding. The words flowed like water finally released from a dam. One evening, she got a call from Isabella. "How's the sabbatical?" her friend asked. "Educational." "How's New York?" "Frigid in every sense." "The Phoenix liquidation is proceeding. You should receive the first restitution payment next month, roughly $50 million. Elena felt nothing at the number. 6 months ago, it would have felt like victory. Now it just felt like mathematics. "Put it in escrow," she said. "I have some ideas about what to do with it." "Care to share?" "Not yet. Still percolating." "How's Meridian?" "Thriving, actually. Christopher has really stepped up as CTO. The new board is functioning well. Honestly, Elena, I think your absence has forced everyone to level up." The words should have stung, the company she'd built succeeding without her, but instead, Elena felt proud. She'd built something that could survive without her. That was true success. Good. That's exactly what should happen. "When are you coming back?" Elena looked out at the Seattle skyline, different from New York but beautiful in its own way. "I don't know. Maybe another week. Maybe a month. I'm trying not to plan too far ahead." Isabella laughed. "Who are you and what have you done with Elena Martinez?" After the call, Elena walked down to Pike Place Market, wandering among the vendors and tourists. She bought flowers, something she never did in New York, and fresh salmon for dinner. She was learning to cook, badly but enthusiastically, in her rental small kitchen. As she prepared dinner, her phone rang with an unexpected name, Alexander Reed. "Elena. I heard you were in Seattle. I'm in town for a conference. Dinner tomorrow?" They met at Canlis, Seattle's most iconic fine dining restaurant. Alexander looked relaxed, healthier than when she'd last seen him during the trial. "You look good," he said, genuinely surprised. "Relaxed. I didn't know you knew how to relax." "Recent development. Still in beta testing." Over dinner, they talked about the Phoenix aftermath, the industry changes, the new normal. But Alexander had another agenda. "I have a proposition," he said over dessert. "Not business, not exactly. I'm launching a new initiative. Calling it the Ethics in Tech Foundation. Funding oversight, supporting whistleblowers, creating industry standards for corporate governance. I want you on the board." "Alexander, I'm trying to step back." "Not from Meridian. From this. From using what we learned to prevent future phoenixes. We both know there are other predators out there. Other Marcus Chens being recruited or coerced. We could make a difference." Elena considered it. It aligned with the thoughts she'd been having, the purpose she'd been seeking. "Send me the details. I'll consider it." Walking back to her rental, Elena felt the pieces of her new life starting to coalesce. Not a complete picture yet, but fragments that might eventually form something meaningful. Her phone buzzed with a text from a number she didn't recognize. She almost deleted it, then saw the preview. "This is Marcus's mother." Elena stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, rain starting to fall. She opened the full message. "This is Marcus's mother, Wei Chen. I know you have no reason to respond to this, but I wanted to thank you. Marcus wrote me from prison. He said you visited him in the hospital, that you showed him grace when he deserved none. He's getting help, real help. He's teaching computer skills to other inmates, finding purpose in service. I don't excuse what he did to you. But thank you for not letting him disappear entirely into his shame. A mother's gratitude, way. Elena stood in the rain, reading the message 3 times. Then she typed back. Mrs. Chen, Marcus was my friend before he was my betrayer. I hope he finds peace and purpose. Thank you for reaching out. She deleted the thread immediately after sending, not wanting to dwell on it. But something loosened in her chest, another small release of the anger she'd been carrying. Back in her rental, Elena opened her laptop and began writing in earnest. Not the reflections she'd been journaling, but a business plan. Not for a company, but for something different, a hybrid between venture capital and nonprofit, focusing on ethical technology and social impact. She worked through the night, energy flowing like it hadn't in months. By dawn, she had 20 pages of notes, ideas, and possibilities. The ethics in tech foundation that Alexander mentioned could be one piece, but she envisioned something bigger, an ecosystem supporting entrepreneurs who prioritized integrity alongside innovation. Her phone rang at 7 a.m. Christopher Vale, sounding panicked. Elena, we have a problem. Someone's leaked our entire client list to TechCrunch. They're running a story about Meridian's vulnerabilities post-trial. The old Elena would have been on the next flight to New York. This Elena took a breath. Chris, your CTO. How would you handle this? Well, I'd issue an immediate statement affirming our security measures. Contact all clients personally to reassure them. Maybe offer free security audits to demonstrate confidence? That sounds perfect. Do it. You're not coming back? Do you need me to? A pause. No. We can handle this. Then handle it. You've got this, Chris. After hanging up, Elena realized she'd just passed a test, not one given by others, but self-imposed. She could let go. She could trust her team. She could exist without being needed for every crisis. 2 weeks later, Elena did return to New York, but differently. Instead of going straight to Meridian's offices, she went first to her apartment, then to a small office space in Brooklyn she'd quietly leased, far from Manhattan's corporate towers, in a converted warehouse that housed artists and startups. The space was raw, concrete floors, exposed beams, huge windows overlooking the East River. It felt like possibility. She met Isabella there for coffee and planning. So this is it? Isabella asked, looking around the empty space. Your new venture? The Martinez Foundation for Ethical Innovation, Elena said, the name feeling right as she spoke it. MEI for short. Catchy. What exactly will it do? Elena pulled out her laptop, showing Isabella the business plan she'd refined over the past weeks. 3 pillars. First, funding for startups that prioritize ethical practices and social impact, below market rate loans, equity investments with patient capital expectations. Second, an accelerator program for underrepresented founders, providing not just money but mentorship and connections. Third, research and advocacy for corporate governance reform. Isabella whistled. Ambitious. Funding? The Phoenix restitution money to start. $50 million. Then fundraising from aligned investors. I've already had interest from several family offices and foundations. And Meridian? I'm stepping down as CEO. Remaining as a board member and advisor, but Christopher is ready to lead. The company needs fresh vision, not someone carrying the weight of its history. Isabella studied her friend's face. You've really thought this through. I had a lot of time to think in Seattle. And Big Sur. And in all those sleepless nights after the betrayal. I kept asking myself, what would have prevented Marcus's betrayal? What could have stopped Phoenix earlier? The answer isn't just better security or legal frameworks. It's culture. It's creating an ecosystem where ethical behavior is rewarded and predatory behavior is exposed. Over the next month, Elena assembled her team for MEI. She recruited Emma Sinclair from Meridian as COO, the legal mind who'd helped navigate the Phoenix crisis. She brought in Dr. Amelia Foster from Stanford as head of research. She convinced Lucas Thorne, not the judge, but a former Google executive who'd become a Buddhist monk and then returned to tech, to lead the accelerator program. The announcement of MEI made waves in the tech press. From revenge to renewal, Elena Martinez's next chapter read the TechCrunch headline. The article was largely positive, though some questioned whether a foundation could really change entrenched corporate culture. The first MEI event was held 6 months after the Phoenix trial concluded. Elena stood before an audience of 200 entrepreneurs, investors, journalists, and students, in the Brooklyn space now transformed into a bright, welcoming environment. A year ago, I discovered my business partner had betrayed everything we'd built together, she began. I spent months fighting for justice, for revenge, for vindication. I won that fight, but victory felt hollow. Because I realized that putting Marcus in prison and destroying Phoenix didn't actually solve anything. There are other Marcuses out there, other Phoenixes, other predators and victims. She paused, scanning the audience. She saw Kevin Hughes from Seattle, his accessibility startup now MEI's first funding recipient. She saw Lily Zhang, who'd joined MEI's advisory board. She saw Charlotte Winters, covering the story that had begun with betrayal and evolved into something else. MEI isn't about preventing betrayal, that's impossible as long as humans are human. It's about creating alternatives. Supporting entrepreneurs who believe success doesn't require sacrificing integrity. Funding innovations that solve real problems, not just create wealth. Building a community where collaboration trumps competition. The response was enthusiastic. Applications flooded in, not just for funding, but for mentorship, partnership, community. Elena found herself energized in a way she hadn't been since Meridian's early days. One evening, 3 months into MEI's operation, Elena was working late in the Brooklyn office when Emma knocked. "You have a visitor." "He says it's personal." Elena looked up to find David Harrison, the Goldman executive who'd inadvertently revealed Marcus's betrayal over dinner so long ago. "David. This is unexpected." He looked uncomfortable but determined. "I wanted to apologize. For my role in what happened. If I hadn't mentioned the Phoenix deal that night." "You saved my company," Elena interrupted. "If you hadn't said something, I might not have discovered the betrayal until it was too late. Still, I should have come to you directly when Marcus first mentioned it. I was trying to maintain relationships with both sides, and that was cowardly." Elena gestured for him to sit. "We all made choices during that time. Some better than others. What matters is what we do next." David pulled out a check. "Goldman wants to invest in MEI. 10 million. And I'm leaving Goldman. I want to work here, if you'll have me. I've spent 20 years making rich people richer. I'd like to spend the next 20 doing something meaningful." Elena studied him. David had always been brilliant with financial structuring. MEI could use someone with his skills. "We pay significantly less than Goldman," she warned. "I'm not here for the money." She extended her hand. "Welcome to MEI." As MEI grew, Elena's role at Meridian shrank. The transition was smoother than expected. Christopher proved to be an excellent CEO, more collaborative than Elena, more innovative in some ways. The company was thriving, its stock price higher than ever. At the annual Meridian shareholders meeting, Elena gave her final speech as CEO. "Meridian was born from a partnership between Marcus Chen and myself. For 12 years, we built something remarkable together. The last year tested us in ways we never imagined. We discovered that trust could be weaponized, that partnership could mask betrayal, that success could make us targets. She looked out at the audience, employees, investors, board members who'd stood by Meridian through the crisis. But we also discovered our resilience. Our values. Our community. Meridian doesn't need me as CEO anymore. You have Christopher Vail, brilliant and dedicated. You have a team that proved its loyalty and capability under fire. You have a board committed to governance and growth. My time as your leader is ending, but my commitment to Meridian's mission continues. The standing ovation was long and genuine. As Elena left the stage, she felt a chapter closing, not with bitterness or regret, but with gratitude. 1 year later. The MEI Foundation's second annual gala was held at the Brooklyn Museum, a far cry from the warehouse where it had begun. 300 guests mingled among contemporary art, celebrating a year of impact, 42 startups funded, creating over 500 jobs, 15 underrepresented founders through the Accelerator program, 3 major policy papers on corporate governance that were being debated in Congress. Elena moved through the crowd, comfortable now in this role, not CEO, not warrior, but facilitator, connector, catalyst. She wore a simple black dress, her hair down for once, looking younger than her 40 years despite everything she'd been through. Elena. Kevin Hughes approached, beaming. I wanted you to meet someone. This is Natalie Grant, she's adapting our accessibility tech for veterans with traumatic brain injuries. Elena shook hands with Natalie, listening as she explained her innovation with passion that was contagious. This was what MEI was about, connecting people and ideas that might change the world. Ms. Martinez? A young woman approached hesitantly. I'm Ashley Thompson. I'm a senior at NYU, writing my thesis on corporate ethics in tech. Could I ask you a few questions? Of course. Ashley pulled out her phone to record. Do you believe people can truly change? Can someone who's acted unethically redeem themselves? Elena considered the question carefully. I believe people can change if they genuinely want to and do the work. Redemption isn't a single act, it's a continuous choice to be better than you were yesterday. Are you talking about Marcus Chin? I'm talking about all of us. We all have the capacity for both betrayal and loyalty, greed and generosity. The key is being conscious of our choices and their impacts. As Ashley thanked her and moved away, Elena noticed Alexander Reed approaching with someone she didn't recognize, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes. Elena, I want you to meet Dr. Nathan Cross, no relation to Phoenix, Alexander added quickly, seeing her expression. He's a professor of ethics at Columbia, interested in MEI's work. They talked for 20 minutes about moral philosophy in corporate settings, the role of culture in ethical behavior, the possibility of systemic change. Nathan was intelligent, thoughtful, and surprisingly funny. When he asked if she'd guest lecture in his class, Elena found herself saying yes. Later, as the gala wound down, Elena stood on the museum's rooftop garden, looking out at the city lights. Lily Zhang joined her, champagne in hand. Hell of a journey from last year, Lily observed. Sometimes it feels like a different lifetime. Any regrets? Elena thought about it. No. Not even the painful parts. They led me here. And Marcus? Any word? He's teaching coding to inmates, working on a book about corporate ethics from the inside. His lawyer says he might get early release for good behavior. How do you feel about that? Neutral. His journey is his own now. We're no longer connected. Her phone buzzed with a message from Christopher. Meridian just closed the Singapore deal. $50 million contract. Wish you were here to celebrate, but know you're doing important work. The company you built continues to thrive. Elena smiled, showing Lily the message. No desire to go back? Lily asked. None. That chapter is closed. This one is just beginning. As the evening ended and guests departed, Elena helped her team clean up, something she never would have done as Meridian's CEO. Emma Sinclair laughed, seeing her carrying trash bags. From corporate titan to cleanup crew? From isolated leader to engaged community member, Elena corrected. This is better. Driving home, Elena took a detour through her old neighborhood in Queens, where she'd lived when Meridian was just an idea. The apartment building looked the same, maybe a little more worn. She parked and stood on the sidewalk, remembering the young woman who'd lived there, brilliant, ambitious, naive about the costs of success. Her phone rang. Julia, her sister. Just calling to say I'm proud of you, Julia said without preamble. I saw the gala coverage online. Mom would be so proud, not of the success, but of what you're doing with it. Thanks, Jules. That means everything. Also, I'm coming to visit next month. I want to see this foundation you've built. And maybe you can introduce me to some of those entrepreneurs you're always talking about. After they hung up, Elena drove home to her new apartment, not the sterile penthouse, but a brownstone in Park Slope she'd bought 6 months ago. It had a garden, neighbors she actually knew, a kitchen where she cooked regular meals. Inside, she poured a glass of wine and sat at her desk, opening her laptop to write. She'd started a book, not a business book, but a memoir about betrayal, justice, and finding purpose beyond revenge. Charlotte Winters had connected her with a publisher, and the first draft was due in 3 months. The blank page stared back at her, cursor blinking. Then she began to type. The betrayal was discovered on an ordinary Tuesday evening, but the seeds of destruction had been planted months before. This is a story about trust, how it's built, how it's broken, and how we rebuild ourselves in its absence. It's about the price of success and the cost of revenge. Most of all, it's about discovering that who we become after betrayal matters more than the betrayal itself. As she wrote, Elena felt the last weights of the past lifting. Marcus was serving his time, finding his own redemption. Phoenix was gone, its predatory practices exposed and punished. Meridian thrived under new leadership. And she had found something she hadn't known she was looking for: purpose beyond profit, community beyond company, identity beyond achievement. Her phone buzzed with one final message of the night, from Victoria Sterling of all people, saw the gala coverage. You've built something remarkable from the ashes. Perhaps there's hope for ruthless corporate operators like myself to find a different path. Would you consider having coffee with a reformed corporate raider seeking redemption? Elena smiled and typed back, redemption is always possible for those willing to do the work. Coffee next week? She closed the laptop and headed to bed, pausing at her bedroom window to look out at the city. New York sprawled before her, millions of lights representing millions of stories, ambitions and betrayals, triumphs and failures, endings and beginnings. Tomorrow, she would wake up and continue building MEI, mentoring entrepreneurs, writing her book, creating the change she wanted to see in the tech world. She would have lunch with former enemies who'd become allies, dinner with former employees who'd become friends. She would guest lecture at Columbia, maybe grab coffee with that ethics professor who'd made her laugh. But tonight, she simply stood at the window, finally at peace with her journey. The path from betrayal to justice to renewal had been painful, but it had led her here, to a life of purpose, connection, and integrity. Marcus had been wrong about one thing in his letter. She hadn't been the heart of Meridian. She'd been its sword and shield, protecting and fighting. Now, finally, she was learning to be the heart of her own life, open, vulnerable, and infinitely stronger for it. The auditorium at MIT was packed, standing room only for the commencement address. Elena stood backstage, reviewing her notes one final time, though she knew she wouldn't need them. This speech had been living in her heart for years. The dean introduced her. Our speaker today graduated from MIT at 21, built a $300 million company, survived one of the most public corporate betrayals in tech history, and transformed that experience into a force for good. She's the founder of the Martinez Foundation for Ethical Innovation, author of the best-selling memoir After the Betrayal, and proof that success without integrity is merely failure in disguise. Please welcome Dr. Elena Martinez. The applause was thunderous. Elena walked to the podium, looking out at the sea of young faces, brilliant, eager, about to enter a world that would test them in ways they couldn't imagine. 20 years ago, I sat where you're sitting, she began. I thought success meant building something big, something profitable, something that would prove I belonged in rooms where people like me, daughters of immigrants, kids from Queens, women in tech, weren't supposed to be. She paused, making eye contact with students in the front row. I built that company. I entered those rooms. And then I learned that success without values is hollow, that trust without verification is naive, and that revenge, even justified revenge, leaves you empty. She told them the story, not the corporate version, but the human one. Marcus's betrayal. Phoenix's predation. The legal battles. But more importantly, the reconstruction. 5 years ago, as I stood in a courtroom watching my former partner be sentenced to prison, I thought I'd won. But winning and healing aren't the same thing. Justice and peace aren't synonymous. Success and satisfaction can be strangers. She talked about MEI's work, the 200 companies now funded, the 1,000 jobs created, the 3 pieces of legislation passed to protect whistleblowers and prevent corporate espionage. But the real success isn't in the numbers. It's in the culture shift. It's in the young entrepreneurs who come to MEI not asking, "How can I get rich?" but "How can I make a difference?" It's in the established companies reforming their governance, prioritizing stakeholder value over shareholder value. As she spoke, Elena spotted familiar faces in the audience. Christopher Vail, still leading Meridian, now a multi-billion-dollar company. Emma Sinclair, who'd taken over day-to-day operations at MEI. Lily Zhang, whose medical device company had gone public last year. Even David Harrison, who'd become MEI's CFO and found purpose he'd never had at Goldman. You're entering a tech industry that's been transformed by recent scandals and reforms. You have opportunities we didn't have, but also responsibilities we didn't understand. You can build companies that create value without extracting it from others. You can lead without leaving casualties. You can succeed without sacrificing your soul. She was nearing the end now, the moment she'd been building toward. Last month, I received a letter from someone I hadn't heard from in 3 years. Marcus Chen, writing from a halfway house where he's serving the remainder of his sentence. He's teaching coding to at-risk youth, trying to give them alternatives to the streets. He wrote to tell me about one of his students, a kid from Roxbury who just got accepted to MIT on a full scholarship. The auditorium was silent. Marcus wrote, "I destroyed so much in my greed and fear. But maybe, through these kids, I can build something worth saving. Thank you for showing me that redemption is possible, even for those who seem irredeemable." Elena let that sink in. I don't forgive Marcus for his betrayal. Some wounds cut too deep for forgiveness. But I acknowledge his humanity, his capacity for change, his effort to balance the scales. That's all any of us can do. Try to build more than we destroy, heal more than we harm, lift more than we tear down. She looked out at the graduates, these brilliant young minds about to shape the future. So here's my challenge to you, build something that matters. Not just to investors or customers, but to the world. Create value that can't be measured in market caps. Form partnerships based on shared vision, not just shared profit. And when you face betrayal, and you will, because humans are human, don't let it make you smaller. Let it make you wiser, stronger, more committed to the values that matter. She raised her water glass in a toast. To your success, Not the kind that makes you rich, but the kind that lets you sleep peacefully. To your failures, not the kind that destroy you, but the kind that teach you. To your partnerships, may they be genuine. To your competitors, may they make you better. And to your integrity, may you never sell it, no matter the price offered. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. As Elena left the stage, she was surrounded by students with questions, requests for selfies, business cards to exchange. She engaged with each one, remembering herself at their age, hungry, brilliant, unaware of the prices she'd pay and the lessons she'd learn. Later, at the reception, the dean pulled her aside. That was remarkable. I haven't seen students that engaged in years. Would you consider a visiting professorship? 1 semester, teaching corporate ethics and entrepreneurship? Elena thought about it. Teaching the next generation, sharing not just knowledge but wisdom earned through pain and triumph. Yes, she said. I'd be honored. As the reception wound down, Elena walked through MIT's campus, past buildings where she'd spent countless hours studying, dreaming, planning a future that had turned out nothing like she'd imagined but everything like she'd needed. Her phone rang. Nathan Cross, the Columbia professor, not the criminal. They'd been dating for 2 years now, a slow, careful relationship built on mutual respect and shared values. How did it go? He asked. Better than expected. These kids give me hope for the future. Dinner tonight to celebrate? Actually, I promised Christopher and the old Meridian team we'd get together. Want to join us? I'd love to. As she walked toward the parking lot, Elena passed a group of graduates taking photos, their whole lives ahead of them. One young woman, South Asian with fierce intelligence in her eyes, approached her. Dr. Martinez? I'm starting a company focused on using AI to detect corporate fraud before it happens. Would MEI be interested? Elena smiled, pulling out her business card. Send me your proposal. But more importantly, tell me why this matters to you. The woman's eyes lit up. My father lost his retirement when his company was destroyed by corporate raiders. I want to make sure that never happens to anyone else. Then we should definitely talk. As Elena drove back to New York, she thought about circles, how life moved not in straight lines but in spirals, revisiting themes at different altitudes. Betrayal and trust. Success and failure. Justice and mercy. Each revolution bringing deeper understanding, broader perspective. 5 years ago, she'd stood in her office discovering Marcus's betrayal, her world shattering. Today, she stood before the next generation, showing them how to build from shattered pieces something stronger, more beautiful, more true. The highway stretched ahead, leading back to New York, to MEI, to the life she'd built from the ashes of the old one. In her rearview mirror, Boston faded into the distance, but the seeds planted today would grow for years to come. Her phone, on speaker, rang with a call from Isabella. How was MIT? Transformative. For them and for me. Good. Because I have news. Remember that legislation we've been pushing for corporate accountability? It passed the Senate today. The Martinez Act is going to be law. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. The Martinez Act, requiring companies above a certain size to have independent ethics boards, protecting whistleblowers, making corporate espionage a federal crime with mandatory minimums. It would prevent future Phoenixes, future Marcuzes, future Elenas from facing what she'd faced. Mom would be proud, she whispered. Your mom would be proud of everything you've become, Isabella said gently. Not the CEO you were, but the leader you are. As Manhattan's skyline came into view, Elena thought about the city that had shaped her, tested her, nearly broken her, and ultimately transformed her. Somewhere in that maze of glass and steel, Meridian continued to thrive. MEI continued to grow. Young entrepreneurs continued to dream. And Marcus Chen, in a halfway house in Brooklyn, continued his own journey toward redemption. The story that had begun with betrayal hadn't ended with justice. It had evolved into something larger, a testament to the human capacity for growth, for change, for building something meaningful from the ruins of what was lost. Elena Martinez had begun as a brilliant young woman with something to prove. She'd become a successful CEO with everything to protect. She'd transformed into a warrior seeking justice. And finally, she'd evolved into something more, a teacher, a builder of builders, a creator of ecosystems where integrity and innovation could coexist. The betrayal had been real. The pain had been devastating. The justice had been necessary. But the renewal, that had been the real victory. As she pulled into her brownstone's garage, Elena saw Nathan waiting on her stoop, holding takeout bags from their favorite Thai place and a bottle of champagne. "Thought we should celebrate the Martinez act properly before dinner with the team," he said, kissing her hello. "You know what?" Elena said, taking his hand. "I think we should." They went inside, to the home she'd built, the life she'd chosen, the future she was creating one decision at a time. Behind them, the door closed on the past. Ahead, infinite possibility waited. The story of betrayal was over. The story of renewal had just begun.